You know, with all these videos looking at the openings of anime, how come we're not looking at the real openings? You guys know which ones I'm talking about. The 4Kids openings.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light
what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight.
In the 90s and the early 2000s, there was an infamous dubbing group by the name of 4Kids. They took common anime and dubbed them, usually changing a lot and leaving some parts lost in translation. Not only did they mistranslate a lot of things, they also edited out a lot of footage. But they also had some of their own openings, and some of these OPs were kick-ass. And some of them missed the point of the show. But either way, I'm going to be looking at these intros. So these are all the intros I know from my childhood. So starting off with what is deemed to be the best intro ever, and the most well known, with good reason. This intro is really good. You see, since 4Kids didn't make the anime, they had to use parts from the Japanese opening and the show to make this one. And what they did was align those shots with the lyrics of the song, and it actually creates a pretty effective intro. Just by watching and listening to the intro, you can easily tell what the show is about. Just within the first 5 seconds, we know who is the main character from the shot, and the first line.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
We know he's on a journey.
I will travel across the land, searching far and wide.
And we know the obstacles that stand in his way.
Oh, you're my best friend, in a world we must defend.
It all checks out. The best part is when each of those lines are said into the intro, it cuts to a necessary part. For example, in the line, "In a world we must defend," we see Team Rocket and Gary Oak, obstacles that stand in our protagonist's way. It's also indicating that Team Rocket, or at least Jesse and James, the two that are shown here, are the villains of the show. It's a good dub opening. There's a reason why it's so iconic. The song matches to the clips from the anime, and it's also about the show. You can at least show this to someone with no knowledge of Pokemon whatsoever, and afterwards they'll probably at least know what it is about. I wish I could say the same for the Yu-Gi-Oh one. I know, this is a favorite from a lot of people's childhood. Yu-Gi-Oh was a show also I consumed a lot more of than Pokemon, but the dub opening is not really that good. It actually starts off pretty well. It starts off with this Egyptian sound in the background, highlighting its Egyptian influence. And we also have this shot of Yugi in the middle, and a close-up of Yugi on the left, with a close-up of Yami on the right. Then cutting to Yugi transforming into Yami, while Yami casts a shadow that splits into two, showing that these two are one. But then the opening just has this collage of all the monsters and events, and it's pretty nonsensical and meaningless. But I can't tell what's going on. At least, if I showed this to someone who has never seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Or know what it is, they probably wouldn't be able to tell it's a show about a card game until we get to the most well-known part of the opening.
It's time to duel!
The only few shots that really tells us something is this one here, where we see Yugi and Pegasus have a face-off, showing a sense of rivalry between them. And the last few shots where we see the main characters, and the song itself is a bit more upbeat, to emphasize their unity and friendship. But it's all just a mess. It just shoves random imagery at times, mostly of the monsters, and they don't ultimately have any kind of meaning. Sure, the theme song is iconic, but the intro itself doesn't really stick to mind. See, that changes with Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, the spin-off kind of sequel to Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I know is infamous to all the nostalgia fags out there that really like the original Yu-Gi-Oh! But this dub opening is actually pretty good. At the very least, it's an improvement on its predecessor. I'd say my favorite thing about this one is that the pacing of the song actually matches the pacing of the anime clips. And there are parts of the song and the intro itself that gives insight to what the show is. We know that these characters are attending a school where they play this game,
But chilling out with the crew in the schoolyard.
as well as that there are some difficulties here and there.
Finding trouble now, but looking too hard. Well, back at class, they never taught us this. Some things you gotta learn, hit 'em this.
The only problem with this opening is that it's similar to its predecessor, where towards the end it shows this collage of the different monsters. But it's played with this really cool electrical guitar solo, and it's kept in pace with the song. It shows a monster and then transitions to the next following the drum beat of the song.
We'll make the grade somehow. Yeah!
So it's not too bad. It's still a problem, but it's a decent dub opening nonetheless.
Come on and get your game on.
Now this one is bizarre. See, I say that with the comparison to the original Japanese opening, where if you listen to that one, you get a good sense of adventure from.
無限大な夢の後の何もない世の中じゃそうはさ愛しい思いも負けそうになるけどステージしかしないイメージだらけの頼りない翼でもきっと飛べるさ Oh my
That being said, this one is not terrible. The best thing about this dub opening is its use of the sound effects, especially in the beginning. See, having that added sound effect of the characters spiraling out of control while they have this confused look on their face, it's good insight to the fact that these characters are forced into this adventure not understanding much. The sound effects continue further as the intro shows off the Digimon and their utility, while the main lyric of the song is mentioning how they're champions. It goes hand in hand. That being said, it never ends. You'll continually be hearing Digimon, digital monsters, Digimon are the champions! For a full minute, over and over and over. I know the Yu-Gi-Oh! Intro had only one line, but it was somewhat botched and it was used a bit infrequently compared to Digimon's. The Digimon one can be quite repetitive. I know there is a small break from that line, but it's only a brief part of the intro, and then it comes back. Oh god, make it end.
There once was a man named Gold Roger who was
Oh,
king of the
what's
pirates.
this?
He had fame,
It's
power,
One
and
Piece.
wealth
I
beyond
love
his
One
wildest
Piece.
dreams. Before
Yeah,
the
it's Gold Roger, he had everything. And then started the Great Pirate Age. Yeah, here's him announcing the treasure part. Ah, it's a great show. Ah, and they're sailing away. Ah, we're coming up to the intro. I love the opening. Ready? Ah, here we go. Come aboard and bring along. No. Ho ho ho. Yeah, remember when 4Kids licensed One Piece?
Usopp, chill. He's history.
What's he doing now, Zolo?
Evidently, he's putting his foot down.
Oh boy! Not gonna lie though, they did a pretty good job with their own opening. Similar to the Digimon one, it has a very stark contrast with its Japanese counterpart. But it still does introduce the show. Sure, it's cheesy as hell, but all of these intros are cheesy. This one, however, does a good job at introducing the show as a whole. It introduced the main character, Luffy, as well as his first two crewmates. We then cut to the main rap part, which details the basis of the plot. There's a treasure known as One Piece, and that whoever gets it will be known as the Pirate King. When we get to the line, there's a shot of someone's eyes and then transitions to all the major contenders in the early arcs of One Piece. It shows us who the adversaries are to the viewer. Not only that, but when it gets to I'll be king of the pirates, I'm gonna be king, it then shows Luffy showing that he's the one aiming to be Pirate King and that it will be him. The opening then reintroduces the characters Luffy, Zoro, oh my bad, Zolo, and Nami, giving a basis for their roles in the crew. In fact, in the later intros, it actually introduces the rest of the crew, up to Chopper that is, and shows them doing their jobs, which tells us their role in the crew.
His name's Olo, he's just like a samurai and a L-A-D-Y. Nami's not shy. Usopp's doing that marksman thing. Sanji's cooking. Chopper's doctoring.
Say what you want about the rap, but this is telling me about the show. An intro or opening is an introduction to the show, and the 4Kids One Piece one does just that. This ain't no Power Ranger Operation Overdrive rap, alright? It's not a bad opening. Stop telling people it's bad. Conversely, I'd actually say this one is bad, and this one is a lot of people's favorites. Really? This one? See, the problem that the Dragonball Z intro suffers is actually very similar to Digimon's. It's the repetition of the line, but instead that's basically the whole song. It's nothing but Dragon, Dragon, rock the Dragon, Dragon Ball Z. And not only that, but the clips it uses for it are not even from the show. They're actually from all the side movies. You've got Tree of Might, World's Strongest, and Dead Zone. And all they use are just the fight scenes from the movies, which is cool to emphasize the action that the series is most well known for, but this isn't telling me anything about the show. There is a lot more to Dragon Ball than just the fighting. I know a lot of people don't see that, but there really is. Dragon Ball Z is about the adventure as well, and especially the early parts of DBZ. It's also about Gohan's character development and how he takes the mantle. I mean, look at the Cell Saga. Instead, all we got is this very obnoxious rock track with the repetition of Rock the Dragon, with nothing but fight scenes. Sure, it's pretty hype, but it doesn't detail what the show is about, and lacks that as an intro. So instead, I think I'd rather stick to Cha-La, Head Cha-La. Metabots, or rather Metarot, is probably one of the few English openings that actually emphasizes the action somewhat decently. There isn't too much singing in the song, and the song is mainly the bass line that you hear.
Go get your friends.
But the first few shots, they do a good job of show don't tell kind of thing. We got our assumed main character who puts a medal in his Metabot and says attack mode Metabi. It then cuts to shots only consisting of those two, showing us that they're the two main characters. We then cut to a line,
Go get your friends.
as it shows three other characters potentially relating to our protagonists. The rest of the intro then showcases a lot of fights between the Metabots, giving the viewer a good idea as to the fact this show is about robots fighting. Of course, this is its problem as well, but as opposed to Dragon Ball, which also suffered from this problem, what Metabots is the Robattles, as they are referred to. Another bonus is the use of the sound effects, again very similar to Digimon, but this time with a lot of metal clanking, which I think is pretty cool.
Metaforce! Metaparts! Metafighters! Metawars! 22nd century!
It's used quite well and keeps the viewer in the know-how of the mechanical age that the 22nd century has come to.
tale of a land conquered by evil.
Rave Master is also another one that has a good show of action and introducing the show itself. And hey, look at that, it's also sung by Real Big Fish. Anyway, moving on. This opening, if there is one way to describe it, it's pretty hype. The first half of it introduces the premise of the show and uses decent imagery to give guidance to the viewer. The world is at a dark place.
Welcome to the tale of a land conquered by evil.
We know who the main character is as it cuts to this guy as soon as it mentions Haru.
Haru and the gang set out to find the answer.
And my personal favorite line, this one here.
But together we must find a way to beat the Shadow Stones.
As it shows Haru destroying one of them, giving us the viewer a good sense on what their goal is in this adventure. The next bit is about the sword, which is also a good inclusion. The sword is a major factor to Rave Master, so hearing how he who has the sword must next become the master is a good way to emphasize the importance of it. The second part of the song is then an entourage of bombastic action. It is pretty hype.
3, 2, 1, time for revolution! Quest for glory!
Probably as well because the last line in the song proclaims that this is the greatest story the world has ever known.
Our hero story will be the greatest the world has ever known.
Pretty ballsy, Rave Master. Pretty ballsy. From this point on, I'll leave it here. This covers most of my childhood intros, barring some, which maybe I'll cover in the near future. It is amazing to see how these intros are, as they had their own theme song and required use of different images and animation, which they would have stolen from the original Japanese footage, just to make something of their own. And because of it, we've got some of the most iconic theme songs to date, even somewhat better than the Japanese ones themselves, and they've stayed in the memories of some. And I'm glad I actually got to look into them somewhat further, even if it was just to ramble on something really trivial. It was fun to go back and have a listen and watch all the American ways these shows have been transformed. This has been your good loser. Thank you for watching.
Banner yet wave.
Happy 4th of July from all of us at 4Kids TV.